One comment, that's all it takes to control you. Someone says something small, and suddenly your mood drops. Your mind won't shut up. You replay it again and again, and just like that, you've lost control. Hours pass, and you're still thinking about it, still reacting to something that shouldn't even matter. So, let me ask you something. Why are you so easy to affect? Why does someone you don't even respect have power over your emotions? Think about that. They say a few words, and it stays in your head all day. They act a certain way, and your entire state changes. That's not normal. That's control. And it's happening to you constantly. Here's the uncomfortable truth. You're not in control of your mind. You're programmable. If someone knows what triggers you, they can control how you feel, how you react, even how you think. And the worst part? You don't even notice it happening. You call it stress. You call it overthinking. You call it just a bad day. But in reality, you're giving your power away to people, to situations, to things that don't deserve it. And until you see this clearly, you'll keep reacting, keep overthinking, keep losing control over and over again. But there's one shift, something most people ignore, because it feels uncomfortable at first. And once you see it, you won't be affected the same way again. You think the problem is what people say or what happens around you. It's not. The real problem is this. You don't have a reaction problem. You have a control problem. Because when something happens, you don't pause, you don't question, you react instantly. And it costs you more than you realize. Not just your mood, your focus, your energy, your time, hours gone, just thinking about something that didn't deserve a minute. That's the part no one talks about. You're not just reacting, you're losing pieces of your day every single time it happens. And the worst part? You think this is normal. You defend it. You say, that's just how I am. But look closer. Someone ignores you, and your mind fills in the story. Someone says one thing, and you build 10 meanings around it. Most of them not even real. So now you're reacting, not to reality, but to your interpretation of it. Let that sink in. You're not controlled by people. You're controlled by what your mind assumes about them. And it happens so fast, you don't even see it. That's why it feels automatic. Because it is. You've been conditioned. Not in some dramatic way, but slowly, repeatedly, silently. Every time you reacted without awareness, you trained your mind to do it again, faster next time, stronger next time. Until now, you don't respond. You repeat. Same trigger, same thoughts, same emotional pattern, different day. And if you're honest, you've lived this loop more times than you can count. So here's the real question. If your reactions are predictable, are they really you, or are you just running a pattern you never stop to question? Because once you see this clearly, you start noticing something strange. There's a gap, a small moment, between what happens and how you react. Most people miss it, but that gap is where your control actually exists. It doesn't take much. That's the problem. One small moment, and your entire state shifts. A message feels off. A tone feels different. Something doesn't sit right. And just like that, your mind locks onto it. Not for a minute, for hours. Something that lasted 10 seconds now controls your entire day. Your focus is gone. Your mood feels off. You're there, but not really there. And you let it happen, like it's normal, like you have no control. But look at what it's doing to you. You carry it everywhere, into your work, into your conversations, into the way you show up. People can feel it. Even if you say nothing, your energy drops. your presence fades. You become distracted, pulled into your own thoughts. And it doesn't stop there. At night, when everything is quiet, your mind gets louder. You go back to it again. What they meant, why it happened, what you should have said. You replay it, then replay it again, each time adding something new. A new meaning, a new assumption, a new story. Most of it, not even real, but your mind treats it like it is. So now it's not just a moment anymore. Now it feels personal. Your value, your respect, your identity, all built from something that probably meant nothing. And here's where it gets uncomfortable. You know this. You know you're overthinking. You know it's draining you. You know it doesn't help. But you still do it. Again, and again, and again. Not because you want to, but because you can't stop. That's not just overthinking. That's a loop that quietly eats your time, your energy, your peace. So ask yourself, how much of your life has been spent inside your head, reacting to things that weren't even real? Because if this keeps happening, then the problem isn't the moment. It's something deeper, in the way your mind holds on, distorts, and refuses to let go. And once you see that, you start to realize, this isn't random. There's a reason your mind works this way. Here's where it gets uncomfortable. The problem isn't that your mind reacts. The problem is, you trust it. Every time you assume what you feel is true, you assume what you think is accurate, so you never question it. That's why this keeps happening. Your mind doesn't show you reality. It shows you a version of it, shaped by what you've experienced before. Not just big moments, but small ones. Times you felt ignored, disrespected, or something felt off. Those moments didn't disappear. They stayed. So now, when something small happens, your mind connects it to something familiar. That's why your reaction feels so strong. It's not just about now. It's about everything it reminds you of. And it happens instantly. No pause, no clarity, just a reaction that feels real, even when it's not. That's the trap. Your mind is trying to protect you from being ignored, disrespected, or uncertain again. So it assumes and fills in the gaps. But this protection is outdated. It reacts to a past that no longer exists and applies it to the present. So now you're reacting to things that aren't actually happening. Your stress, overthinking, and emotions often come from something that isn't even real right now. But because it feels real, you believe it. That's the real problem. Not the reaction, but the blind trust behind it. Once you trust every thought, you stop choosing your response. Your mind starts running on its own, repeating patterns, controlling your state. That's not awareness. That's automation. But the moment you question it, is this even true? Everything starts to change. You're trying to control the wrong things. That's the mistake. You think your problem is what people say, what they do, how they treat you. So you try to manage it. You replay it. You analyze it. You wish it went differently. But none of that is in your control. And deep down, you already know that. Yet you keep going back to it. That's why it drains you. Because you're investing energy into something you were never meant to control. Here's the shift, the one most people never make. Your control doesn't exist outside. It never did. It exists in one place only: how you respond. Not what happens, not what's said, but what you do next. And right now, you're skipping that part completely. You react first and think later. That's why everything feels out of control. Because the moment something happens, you let your mind decide what it means, and you follow it without question. But here's what changes everything. It's not the situation that affects you. It's the meaning you give it. Same moment, different interpretation, different outcome. That's it. And the Stoics trained one simple thing: the pause. Not because they were naturally calm, but because they refused to react blindly. They understood something most people miss. The first reaction is automatic, but the second one is a choice. And that choice only exists if you slow down enough to see it. That's where your control is, not in stopping the thought, but in not obeying it instantly. Because the moment you stop reacting automatically, you create space. And in that space, you're no longer controlled. You're deciding. Now, this is where it changes. Not slowly, but in a moment you almost miss. Because once you see it, you can't go back to reacting the same way. You start catching it, right as it begins. The thought, the reaction, the story forming in your head. And for the first time, you don't fully fall into it. You hesitate, just for a second. But that second matters, because that's the gap. The moment your mind starts pulling you, and you don't immediately follow. Before, it was automatic. Now, there's resistance. You see what your mind is doing, not as truth, but as a reaction trying to take over. And that changes everything, because the moment you see it clearly, it loses control over you. Nothing outside has changed. People are still unpredictable. Situations are still messy. But you're different now. You're not inside the reaction anymore. You're above it, watching it happen, without being pulled into it instantly. The thought shows up, but you don't obey it. The emotion rises, but it doesn't control your next move. And that's the shift. Not forcing your mind to be quiet, but refusing to follow it blindly. That's how the loop breaks. Not by stopping thoughts, but by not feeding them. And once that happens, you feel something new. Space. And in that space, you realize something most people never do. You are not your first reaction. You are the one who decides what happens next. And when you truly see that, you're no longer easy to control. Now this is where it becomes real. Not theory. Something you can actually use. Start with this. Separate what's in your control from what isn't. When someone ignores your message, when something doesn't go your way, you feel the urge to fix it, control it. But you can't, and that's why it drains you. Shift your focus from what they did to how you respond. That's your ground. Now this is where most people fail. They react too fast. Something happens, and they follow the first emotion, the first thought, without question. But your first reaction isn't truth, it's conditioning. So pause, even for a second, because that second is the difference between control and regret. And here's the deeper one. It's not the event that affects you. It's what you decide it means. Someone replies late, and your mind says, they don't care. But that's not reality. That's interpretation. Change the meaning, and the reaction changes with it. This one is harder than it sounds. Stop taking everything personally. Not everything is about you. Most people are too focused on themselves to think about you the way you think they do. But your mind makes it personal, and that's where the pain starts. Now listen carefully. This next one is where most people stay stuck. Accept what already happened, not because you like it, but because it already exists. The moment is done. But if you keep fighting it, you keep reliving it. Acceptance doesn't make you weak, it makes you free. And this one quietly controls more of your life than you realize. The need to be understood. You want people to get you, to agree with you, to see your side. But they won't always, and chasing that keeps you dependent. Let it go, and you take your control back. Now this is where awareness becomes power. Observe your thoughts without obeying them. A thought appears, and you treat it like an order. You follow it, react to it. But it's just a thought, not a command. Watch it, and let it pass. Because the moment you stop obeying every thought, you stop being controlled by them. This one builds everything else. Train your mind daily, not perfectly, but consistently. Because awareness isn't automatic. It's built. The more you notice, the less you react. Now understand this. Your peace is destroyed by expectation. You expect things to go your way, people to behave a certain way, life to feel fair, and when it doesn't, you suffer. Let go of that expectation, and you remove the trigger itself. And finally, this is the one that changes everything if you take it seriously. Protect your inner state. Not everything deserves your attention. Not every situation deserves your reaction. Because every time you react unnecessarily, you give something else control over you. And once you see that clearly, you start choosing differently, not reacting to everything, only what truly matters. At some point, you notice something that feels different. Not outside, inside. The same things still happen. People still say things. Situations still go wrong. But something unexpected happens. You don't react the same way. Not because you forced yourself, but because you saw through it. That message that used to stay in your head for hours now fades faster. That comment that used to control your mood now feels smaller. And that's when it hits you. It was never about what happened. It was about how much control you gave it. And now, you don't give it the same control anymore. Not automatically. There's a pause, a choice. And in that small moment, you take something back you didn't even realize you lost. Control. And once you feel that, even once, you can't ignore it anymore. Because now you see the difference between reacting and deciding, between being pulled and standing still. You still have thoughts, you still feel emotions, but they don't move you the same way. And here's the part most people never reach. You stop trusting every thought you have and start trusting yourself instead. Not your first reaction, but your ability to pause and choose something better. That's where real control begins. Not outside, not in other people.